Um, Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I am so pleased to welcome you to the Abel Contemporary Gallery and to be here today with Charles. I'm going to give you, many of you know Charles. I'm going to give you a little introduction to him. We're recording this, and so there will be people who don't know all the things you know about Charles. So let's talk about his background a little bit. Charles was born and raised in the area of St. Louis, Missouri. As a child, he and his family spent summers in Door County, Wisconsin, where Charles was impressed by the clarity of light and color on the shores of Lake Michigan. Charles attended Reed College in Portland, Oregon for 2 years and began his training as an artist and realist with realist painter Willard Midget?
Midget.
Thank you. He attended the Portland Art Museum School and the New York Studio School of Drawing, Painting, and Sculpture, returning to Reed College, where he graduated Phi Beta Kappa in 1968, majoring in painting. He then apprenticed himself to William Sir, who was paintings conservator for the Frick Collection in New York City. He has worked part-time as a freelance paintings conservator for many years. After extensive travel for 2 years, visiting most of the major museums in the United States and Western Europe, Charles finally settled in Wisconsin. I've been aware of Charles's paintings long before we began exhibiting his work at this gallery, and I cannot recall when I first became aware of his work. It seems so interwoven with the history of Wisconsin art. Charles's paintings reflect a singular point of view and a dedication to his craft, and I'm so pleased to host this exhibit and to have this opportunity to talk with Charles today.
Thank you. First, I want to say how happy I am to see even this many people on such a bad day for events. There are so many distractions, and thank you so much for coming here in spite of all those distractions.
Yep.
I love showing at Abel Contemporary, and it's a pleasure to show here because it's directed by Theresa, and much of the staff. Theresa and much of the staff are artists, and it's very comforting to be showing and be supported by other artists. I don't know if you realize what that means to me. It's just a different feeling to have that kind of support. Thank you very much.
You're so welcome.
I'll start just telling you something that probably most of you know. I just love paintings. Not just my paintings, but paintings in general. I love paintings from, I think from the last almost 1,000 years back, from the 12th century to the 21st century. I'm just crazy about paintings. And maybe that's hard for some of the people around me, but it gives me so much pleasure to be able to just look at paintings, talk about paintings. To me, paintings are almost alive, like animals are alive, but differently alive. And I find pleasure talking about them, as I'm going to talk to you about them, but I want to make a kind of a disclaimer about it before we go any further, and that is to say that we don't really accomplish much talking about paintings because nothing that we say about a painting changes the painting. The paintings have their own integrity. They exist outside of our way of thinking. they can't be described in words. I don't know if you've ever tried, but they can't be. They can hardly even be photographed, but they, that comes close. But they are things unlike anything else in the world. They're alive. I said that already, but it just means so much to me to see all the different paintings and see how some of them are very much more alive and some aren't much alive at all. They seem almost not worth looking at. And that's not one of the things you can talk about when you talk about paintings. But the point is that a painting belongs to itself. It has its own integrity. And I often, there's Randall.
There's chairs up here, Randall. Come join us.
I often
Can I sit there?
Yeah, please.
I often think of a painting as a piece of the world with a line drawn around it. And in my case, the line is physical. I put a line around my paintings because that kind of helps me think about the life that is within the painting. But some paintings just have an edge, but they're still just as much constricted or constrained by that line. They exist within the line, and they are nothing outside the line. And that's another thing that it's a mystery about paintings. And I'm sure it has something to do with other works of art too, but two-dimensional works of art are especially mysterious in this way. So I often start drawing the line physically on my sketchbook or my canvas, and then I begin drawing within it or coloring within it, trying to discover what is alive there. And it's very satisfying for me to do that. The painting may be made of mineral, vegetable, chemical. It's made of a bunch of different things, but those aren't its essence. Its essence is within itself. And that's kind of my disclaimer about it. We talk about paintings, but it doesn't mean anything to talk about paintings. It's this contradiction within the whole territory. So now I get to the part that is more about this show and balancing. Balancing is the word of the year for me. I painted the painting called Balancing, and then after I had painted it, I discovered how much it meant to my life in general, how much balancing there is to be done within my life. I have to be balancing physically, the way we all do, except I have more and more trouble doing it. I'm even taking balancing therapy, which seems amazing to me now, and I hadn't thought of that when I conceived of this painting. In fact, I don't even know where the conception came from, which is another part of the mystery of paintings. They come out of nowhere. At least in my case, they do. And it's a place that I don't know whether I should wish that I had access to it or not. I love the way it comes to me and gives me presents, gives me gifts. But I wanted to say that I've discovered that I used to take balancing for granted. In the past, when I was younger, I was a daredevil. I was a balancing daredevil. I used to walk on tops of high roofs. I'd watch the ridge, I'd walk the ridge pole, you know, the very top of the roof without any fear or any trouble. And then at some point, you know, that sense of balancing started going away. And I am now where I can hardly balance at all. You know, I carry a stick often. But balancing requires constant attention, not just physical balancing, but balancing in my life, I've found. And I've learned it kind of late in life, maybe. I'm 80 years old, but I've learned it partly from the paintings, but mainly from my body, from the physical experience of getting old and needing to think about balancing. And it's also something that requires constant attention intellectually. I've learned more and more that I need to be balanced in my mind, in my spirit, that I don't want to go to extremes. I don't want to be an extremist in either direction. I'm trying to find, more and more, I'm trying to find the middle way, which is always evading me, of course, because, I mean, the extremes are easy because you knock up against the end of whatever that is, but the center is always changing. It's always requiring a new analysis of what the middle way is, what feels true and balanced. It's a way of life for me at this point. Especially now, because after 80 years, I mean, I'm sure I should have been expecting it, but suddenly I'm old. And I think that the right time to start thinking about being old would have been in the middle, when you could be looking in both directions and thinking about what was going to happen next.
Did you think you could prepare for it better?
I think you can look.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think you have to be as surprised as I was. I felt as if I was on a plateau and then suddenly came to the edge. I mean, that's, you know, maybe an exaggerated image, but I think that I could have thought more about it in advance, and maybe I would have profited from that. But now that I'm old, I suddenly realize that death is near, and thinking about death is good in a way, because I look at death and somehow death reflects back into life. It reflects back and illuminates life. Just because I know it's there, it affects the way life is. And it brings drama to my life, which in a way is good, I think. It certainly is good in my paintings, because I appreciate the sense of drama that it gives to my paintings. And I keep reminding myself that we will die because we have lived, that the two things go together. You can't live without dying, and we will die because we've lived, and we live because we will die. It all goes together, and that's the kind of balancing that I've kind of brought to the paintings more recently, especially on the ones that are the ones that are most affected by old age, I think, are the darker ones. I think I talked in the artist statement about just recently, as I became more aware of being old and kind of heading in the direction of death, I became more interested in opaque colors. And this involved my process of painting. In the past, I always painted transparent, glazed colors with lines around them. I don't know, most of these paintings, the best example of it is the one called High Summer, but I don't know if there's an example of it right here, but any of these fit into that category. The glazing comes first and the outlines go second on top of the glazing. And in my process, I kind of created the image first with the lines, then with the glaze, and then I went to the oil painting. That was a watercolor. And then I went to the oil painting and painted it as an oil painting with the glazes and then the solid lines. But as I suddenly became interested in opaque colors, I picked up opaque watercolors, not temperas, but casein, things like that. And I started painting with opaque colors directly onto my paper, but I didn't do anything with the lines until I had the opaque colors working together. And so it meant that, like in the picture of the horse prairie over there, I was painting the dark colors, the dark red, the dark blue sky, and the green, the lighter blue. I painted those first, and I had to have a harmony. I had to have them working together before I went ahead and added some lines. So the lines were no longer necessary to me. This was the first time that I no longer had to use the lines. For so many years, I had always had these rules about how I would paint paintings. I would always paint, a line around each form, and I would always paint the lines the same thickness. I used the same brush in each painting. I used the same brush to make those lines. And more recently, maybe because I'm old, I decided I don't have to follow these rules. I mean, they served me very well at the beginning, and for many years afterwards. It helped me focus on what my purposes were at that time. But now my purposes are apparently different. I'm figuring out this, I'm figuring out that something else is going on. And so in a case like that, I discovered that I would only put the lines on when I felt they were absolutely needed. And that clarified things for me in some way. I don't know how to say it exactly. The one with the horse, the tree, and the moon, to the right of that, that's another example of that. The only thing with the line around it there is the horse and the hills, for what it's worth.
So can I ask you,
Sure.
just to go back, so this has been a mature style of yours with lines for quite a long time. Why did you make those rules for yourself? So there's a line, like there's a bigger line, all the paintings are framed like this, and when did that come up? Like where did that come from?
Almost at the very beginning, when I struggled to stop being a realist painter. If any of you have looked at the book that was published about me 25 years ago, I don't know when, it tells the whole story of that tradition, but I was a realist painter for a long time, not that long compared to the rest of my life, but and then at some point I decided that it seemed out of balance to have all this attention to the real image and not enough to the well, maybe I should say this. I'll start over a little bit. Every painting, not just mine, every painting has, even the most realistic painting has an abstract structure, an abstract framework that it's inside it, underneath it, supporting it. No matter how much the artist was aware of it, no matter how much we're aware of it looking at it, it's there, or else the painting would just collapse. It doesn't work. A painting doesn't work without that structure holding it. And at some point, I realized that, and the structure behind it, the abstraction that is behind every painting, whether it's realistic or abstract, that abstraction is what gives life to the painting, carries the emotion in the painting. It starts things moving around. These paintings are two-dimensional, and we're trying to show 3 dimensions.
Right.
And this abstraction helps us do that, helps us convey some sense of three-dimensionality without having the ability to really move into the 3 dimension, the 3rd dimension. So I decided that I wanted a way to make paintings that would be somewhat balanced between the abstraction that I thought was really necessary to me at that point. A lot of it was about emotion for me, but I came to it through emotion. But I discovered a lot of other things about my need for abstraction at that point. So I set myself the problem. This was about 1985 or something, 82 maybe even. In any case, a long time ago. I set myself the problem of, I decided that I was going to be a semi-abstract painter. I didn't know what that meant exactly, but it helped me to tell myself, I'm a semi-abstract painter. And my purpose, my problem, my goal is to discover where that semi-abstraction, where the abstraction, where the realism meet each other.
Right.
What the balance is between them. And I have spent, the rest of these years trying to figure out where that balance was. And to go back to your question.
Yeah.
At the beginning, I decided that the best way for me to think of my paintings the best way to keep my eye on the goal of abstraction while I was making representational paintings was to limit my means as much as I could. So I limited the colors, and I told myself that I had to put a line around every form, and that those lines in each painting had to be the same width within that painting. And that allowed me to tell myself that I was going to learn stuff other than that. And I wanted to learn about motion. I wanted to learn about color. And I knew right at the beginning even that color was a big carrier of emotion, but I didn't understand it. And I finally learned, after gradually over the years, I learned that there really is no understanding color. It's too fluid. You you can't grab it. It's too elusive. I mean, maybe there are some people who understand it in some intellectual way, but I kind of doubt it. I know there are people who come to color more instinctively than I do. I know that, but that was part of my problem, to master color, or to learn to figure out color, in spite of the fact that my own talent as a colorist was limited.
Well, color's so important in your work.
That's why, because I insisted, and it was just because I focused on color, abstraction, simplification, all these ways that I was able to do that.
Well, I think we're glad that you were so hard on yourself.
No, it wasn't.
Because the results have been
It wasn't hard.
But then you set yourself these goals as an artist. It's like you were your own. You weren't your own teacher.
And I learned all the way.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have done it if I hadn't been learning the whole time.
Right.
And I feel as if, even though I'm aging, I'm just as good a painter as I ever was. And my paintings, in some ways, they have more depth, emotional depth maybe, than they ever did. In the past, I've had some paintings that hit high points of, emotional depth, or that I felt were very satisfying in that way. But now I feel as if I can reach for that with more confidence.
Yeah.
And that's something maybe that comes with age. I don't know. Yeah. It comes with this sense of a renewed sense of where the balance is. And for instance, this painting,
Night Watch.
Night Watch. It's not exactly. I didn't compose it using the opaque colors, but I was already on the edge of feeling that I wanted to deal with darkness. In fact, I started this painting, or the other paintings that are in the series, I started it in approximately 1993. I started it not for this show at all, and I discovered that it wasn't ready for the last show that I was going to put it in, and I just had to abandon it until I came back to it as I started painting paintings for this show. And as a result, I've given it more attention, I've worked harder on it than almost any painting I've ever painted. Climaxing with this one. And the variations within it, because I had 4 versions, I think 4, I was able to keep enriching it. For instance, the one that's behind you has no lamb. And when I realized that, I thought, there's another animal over there, And then I thought along about it, and I realized I wanted it to be a lamb. And then I wanted it a square painting, so I made the painting taller and wider and ended up with this version. But that's the kind of thing that I do with all the paintings. Should I say something about the process of the small to large?
Yeah, I think that's super interesting, because they're not studies,
No, they're not studies and they're not sketches.
Yeah,
no.
they're just exploring.
The first painting, the one that is a study or a sketch, is the one that's in watercolor or watercolor and crayon or something on paper. that's where I first put down an idea for my paintings. And then if I'm interested in that, small watercolor or whatever it is, then I start working on a small painting. And they're almost always, well, I don't know what, 16 by 20, this size. And so I paint that painting, and then I have to decide, will I learn something? Do I want something more from it? Almost always, sometimes I abandon the idea after the first painting, but more often I'm excited about the idea, what will I learn if I make it larger? And I learn a lot from making a painting larger. You just have no idea what you're going to find the next step up. It's just amazing.
Is it always small have you ever worked on something large or like more medium size and then thought, I want to see what happens if I shrink it?
No,
it never happens.
no. I mean, what sometimes does happen, I really like when I go from I guess I could step back. When I was a realist painter, I always had a subject and it was always in front of me, right? A landscape, a still life, a group of figures, and I don't think I could have painted those paintings without that to refer to. So I can look at the canvas, I can look at the subject, I can go back and forth. But when I was painting by myself, out of my head, there was nothing to refer to. And the first watercolor was just, flying free. I mean, it required a lot of attention and courage and, what's the other thing where you don't think at all? Just throw it down. And so once that's there, then I've got to start. And with the first small version, I can keep looking back at that. But then with the next larger version, if it happens, right, I refer to the one smaller one. And I know that I want to do it like that, or I want to do it different,
Right.
And I keep moving to the next larger one. Often I do 3. I don't often do 4. I don't think I've ever done 5. But what does happen often is I'm working on whatever it is, number 2, and I learn something from it, and I go back to the smaller one and make that one better. So I'm sometimes going back and forth. And that's another way to learn from my own paintings without having to deal with the real world, which I don't do anymore so much.
You were talking about this, the not thinking, sort of, I think perhaps like a trust or intuition as an artist. Like where you just sort of, but you have to trust, right? That whatever's coming to you automatically is actually going to be the right thing, because it's too easy, I think, as artists to edit ourselves, self-edit ourselves.
Get scared.
Right. Yes. But I'm assuming, if you were to look back, that foundation you had in realism was helpful?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
The answer is yes.
Yes. You don't have to go on about it.
Because although I don't model, I don't do light and shade, or I'm sure I'm doing it some nowadays, but I didn't used to do modeling. But you would be surprised, or maybe you wouldn't, how much form you can create just with little marks. You can make it round, you can make it, move in space, you can do all sorts of things with just a few marks. Where we think that our eyes see like photographs, but our eyes pick up on all sorts of cues that aren't in photographs, and those are the kinds of cues that I've learned more about by painting this way. I'm always trying to make you see something that you might not automatically see. You know, I want to manipulate my vision and your vision with these tricks of line and color.
Well, and I didn't, when we were at the opening, you came to me and said about this painting, if anyone else had noticed that the woman is pregnant, and I hadn't, and then the minute you said it, I realized, and it's just this line.
Yeah.
Well, in that one, there's 4 lines actually, so you were playing with how to tell us that, as the view, how to manipulate us. But it's amazing, isn't it?
Actually, what I said to you was, someone spoke to me, and he said, "Is that woman pregnant?"
So he knew.
And I said yes, but he was the only person, all my friends, all the audience, not Theresa,
I didn't notice it.
didn't notice it, and I didn't feel it was important to emphasize. It was just something in my head. This woman is pregnant. And it didn't matter that much to me whether other people thought she was or not. But it enriches the painting for me, because it means that there's more, there's a future to it. You know, this is a family, and their children and, you know, grandparents and adults, and maybe there's going to be another child.
Yeah.
Nancy?
Well, I was just thinking about that line.
Could you talk a little louder?
Was she pregnant in your mind before you put the line there?
I think maybe. See, that's the first oil painting over there. And when I look at that, I think she's pregnant.
Oh.
And I think maybe that's why I think of that as a smock, kind of, that she's wearing, like a pregnancy smock. Is that the right word?
Pregnancy smock, it is now. They've created a term.
Whatever.
She's a painter, a smock.
But did I answer your question?
I think so.
Maybe.
Hey, I have one last question, and then let's open it up to everyone to Q&A. But I just want to ask you, and this might be a short question, but in the theme of balancing, and you talk about, there's also a balancing of life, and you talk about thinking a lot about death and the end of life now. In terms of balancing your time, do you feel a need to rush in your studio and think, I have to use all this time and make as many paintings? Or do you feel like, I need to spend more time with my loved ones? Like, how do you...
No, it's not. It's just something I never think about.
Oh, you don't? Oh, okay, well then... put it out of your mind. Now I've created...
I thought you were going to ask another thing entirely.
No.
Oh, okay. The balancing painting is special to me because it doesn't fit into a lot of these categories. I don't know where the idea came from. It was a gift, you know, into my head, and it's not painted in exactly the way I've painted other paintings. It has more solidity of color. It's not the best color of all the paintings, in my opinion.
Oh,
I mean, I think it's fine. I wouldn't have let it out of the studio if it wasn't, but...
Another reason why sometimes artists aren't the best judge of their...
Oh, well, anyway, that's how I feel.
It's a marvelous painting.
But it makes up for all of that with this image, which just amazes me when I think about it, because I don't know where it came from. And I sketched it out and was able to do, you know, I think its first version was this big. You know, this was just the color. And it has gone from there.
Did the animals you included change? Or was it always going to be a goat and a bear and a deer and a crane?
I don't think they changed. The cat wasn't there to begin with. You see the cat?
I do see the cat.
Yeah. And I think they were always there. They were in maybe slightly different positions, you know. The goat was very hard for me because I have no experience of goats. So I had to do some research, but otherwise.
Well, I'm sorry, are you being faithful to a vision that you had of that? Or did you think about the concept and then you're like, what animals do I want to include? Or was it just all full bore at once came out of your head that way?
The concept was that I wanted to have a bunch of animals on top of each other balancing,
Okay.
like gymnasts, but a bunch of different animals.
Yeah.
And as I said in the artist statement, I feel as if we can accomplish that kind of cooperation with other animals, maybe we can solve some of our problems in this world. And this is a way that I can visualize it. There are so many things happening in the world that I have no way of visualizing, but this seemed to be one once I had discovered it. And it meant a lot to me. Something about it was difficult to paint, and this was as big as it went. But I keep thinking, if somebody, you know, wanted a big one, I'd love to paint it much bigger.
Yeah. It's a great composition. It's such a compelling painting. Yeah. Any other questions?
I want more questions.
More questions?
Well, could I harp on? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So do you
Phil,
do you spend a lot of time in nature?
what?
Do you go on walks to get inspiration?
Yes, I live on 200 acres in the hills of southwest Wisconsin near Spring Green, and I used to cover those 200 acres, you know, daily, weekly. I was very active and energetic and a skier and, you know, all that. I have trouble walking now, and I don't go that far anymore. I've probably taken, I think it took an hour's walk on that property last week, maybe, which was a lot of fun, but it was a challenge, and I think I paid for it with my legs. But I mean, it's all nature-based, all my paintings. They're all nature-based. They're all landscape-based. I mean, landscape is where my paintings came from. And the landscapes are behind the paintings, supporting the paintings. And maybe because landscapes are the easiest thing you can make an abstract painting be a landscape almost without thinking. You know, landscapes are almost abstractions before you even start. And I think that was part of my way of coming into making the transition, because I was a landscape painter, among other things, before.
Right. Well, the minute you make a line across, you've created a horizon, and then
Yeah.
there you go.
So do you make sketches when you go, when you're outside? Do you make sketches, or do you take the ideas back to the studio?
I almost never sketch outdoors, and
Okay.
sometimes I have gone, I have to take it back. Sometimes I've taken my sketchbook outdoors and made, something around me inspired one of these small crayon and watercolor paintings in my sketchbook, but I wasn't drawing the landscape the way you might imagine.
Did you have
I
another
do.
follow-up question?
Yeah. So do you usually stand when you paint, and how is your balancing issue affecting the way you paint?
What about the stool?
I sit and stand, and I do fine standing and painting, and I have a roller chair that I sit on and roll around. So I sometimes sit and paint, and I sometimes stand and paint. The only problem is when I have a big painting, I have to step up onto a little step stool, and then stepping down can be very dangerous for me. I have to keep my wits about me, and the worst thing is if I step down and turn around at the same time. Sometimes I just go right down.
Charles, that's worrying to me that you stand on a step stool. Do you not have the kind of easel?
I don't have an easel. I paint with the canvas pinned to the wall. I don't, what's the word? I don't finish the outline of the painting.
So you don't stretch the canvas until after it's finished?
No.
Ah.
That's part of what makes me feel so free about
Okay.
drawing a line and then inventing within it. Even when I have the canvas out there, I pin it to the wall, and then I make an attempt
Right.
at an outline,
Right.
and then I work within it. But there's always room to move those edges, and that's why if you look at the list of my paintings, you'll find that there's some very odd sizes because I don't start with
I see. Yes.
with
Yeah.
well, anyway.
We can talk more later about how
Yeah.
we could adjust his studio for safety.
I had a question, like in the painting behind you, you know, the depth of color makes each shape kind of pop, and you see this, you know, movement back into the surface, especially with your outlines, which you know, they're all the same width, but at the bottom of the feet in the hooves and things is open, which keeps things grounded. So things are like popping out and staying
That's an interesting
flat
observation.
at the same time. So I was just curious about that decision, or if it was one.
Putting the figures on top of
Well, no, like the line ends so that they're.
is
That's
that
what
what
you're
you're
right? I've
talking
never
about?
noticed that before.
where I
That's super
didn't
interesting.
put a line under
Yeah.
the foot. I think that's the reason. I mean, it's a feeling sometimes. Sometimes I do put that line in, but more often I don't. To let it be grounded. Yeah.
The line was underneath it, it would look like they were levitating, like they were
Well,
floating.
yeah, sometimes that works actually, but more questions?
Yeah, good
I
Phil?
was just going to ask, how did you resist the urge to use shade and light, and instead just go with one,
With this kind of painting?
with most of the
I'm
people?
just that kind of person. You know, I make the rules for myself, and then I follow them until I can't stand it any longer. Because I come from a family of scientists, and I had to fight to be an artist, but I'm still have that heritage. And so I set up the experiment, you know what I mean? And I carry it through, and then I learn from the results. And I don't want to break the rules until I want to. You know what I mean?
Well, that makes a lot of sense, especially in the repetition, like wanting to see what happens if I make it bigger and it's not square, and I make it a more horizontal, and what happens if I add a lamb, and yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. More questions, please?
So some of your landscapes are these sort of familiar places, to me at least. Like I can imagine this snow scene as a place in Wisconsin, but many of them are these very kind of surreal and unfamiliar places where these characters come together. And I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit about why you're bringing all of these different characters into a composition together to make this kind of unfamiliar space feel familiar to us.
I'm not sure what the question is.
Can you talk a little bit about the symbolism of the different kind of characters that you use within?
Point to one painting that
Well, the painting behind you, I think because we can all see that
Yeah.
one. Like, you're bringing all, like there's certain animals that repeat. Like, I've seen the deer in your pieces often, the bear in your pieces often. There's animals that you gravitate towards. The cat has appearing in this body of works in several places, but it's not that isn't an animal that I've seen a lot in your work. So can you talk a little bit about why you choose the animals that you choose?
Well, most of the animals that I choose live around me, or I'm familiar with. Some are domestic animals, and those I'm familiar with too. But the deer and the bears, I mean, we've had bear wander through our property. But those are all, I identify with them. But a larger aspect to your question is, one of the ways I work is I have series of paintings that come through the years. You know what I mean? Within this gallery, I have a series of 4 or a series of 3, but another way that I work with series is I have a series of paintings that focus on the same question or use the same kind of composition.
Themes that repeat?
Often, yeah. And what I'm leading up to is that I've done several paintings where the inhabitants, the figures that are standing there, facing out, confronting me, speaking to us, except without speaking. And that's something that was new to me, I don't know when, 20 years ago maybe. I started having people doing that, which is it's a different way it kind of breaks the wall of the painting. And that's something that I didn't do for a long time. And now I've found that it's a way for me I identify with these figures, and so then it's a way for me to talk to the people who are looking at it and talk to myself as I paint it. And I think of them kind of as peaceable kingdom paintings. Do you know those paintings that are kind of a tradition in American painting especially? Where the lion lies down with the lamb and the Adam and Eve and all that. And I think that they originate somewhere in the Bible.
Yeah.
But these are part of that tradition. Did that help any?
It did.
Okay.
Yes.
How has your past experience in art restoration impacted your professional career?
Oh, that's a big one.
Right.
This is what Randall always wants me to talk about. And
I find it so fascinating that.
Yeah, well, as a painting restorer, one of the things we did, this is with my partner and I did this together, where there's a piece of paint missing, you fill it, the loss up to level, and then you paint it very carefully and to match. And it has to match perfectly. It's not just approximate, the way when you're painting for your own painting, you can just approximate stuff. So I got to be very good at color mixing. And color mixing, being able to mix the colors that you want, affects the way you put color into your paintings. Because if you can't mix the colors, you're limited. And I'm sure, I don't know this for sure, but I think that there are a lot of artists who can't really mix colors colors well enough that they can get the color they want every time, or maybe they don't even stick to the effort long enough to, but I know that I can do it, I stick to it, and I get the color that I want. And another thing about that is we spent, days, weeks, months sitting in front of this painting and working on it. And so if it was a good painting, which a lot of them weren't, but if it was a good painting, good enough to really appreciate spending that much time with it. If it was a good painting, I absorbed the feelings of a good painting. And over the years, we worked on paintings, by Rembrandt, by Rubens, by, I can't think right now, it's been a long time.
That's on the page.
Who?
In the Milwaukee Museum, that big painting.
Bastien Lepage. We restored a lot of the paintings in the Milwaukee Art Museum. But if you spend time with good paintings long enough, then you absorb this feeling of what it takes to make a painting good. And in that sense, I'm saying alive. They come to life if they're good, and they kind of move within the frame, and they talk to you. And anyway, so I learned that. I always knew it somewhat. I always loved paintings, and I looked at art books and all that. But sitting in front of a real painting, you learn it in a different way than you do looking at art books. You learn it the way you do in a museum, but in a museum, you don't get to spend that much time with it. It's a different kind of thing.
You don't get to touch it.
And so I could apply that sense, that it's like a sense, a sixth sense, a seventh sense, whatever, to my own paintings. And then I could say, it's finished. That you have to know when to stop, which is hard for most artists, I think.
Yeah. Well, that's a good question. Any other questions? Yes.
Do you work on different paintings at the same time?
I do,
Okay.
yeah. I usually have 3 or 4 going at once, and it helps to do that because, there's a lot of reasons. Yes, I do. I can go from one to the next, and I can let the paint dry. There are times when I'm able to work when part of the paint isn't dry, but there are other times when I don't want to. I often don't want to put the lines on. If I'm painting these lines, I don't want to make a mistake and make a mess of that lovely green glaze, And so I wait for it to dry. And if I have 3 or 4 going at once, then I can do that. I'm sure there's other reasons why I do what I do.
Right. So you can think about it and then decide you need to rework it.
Yeah. I have a fresh
eyes.
I can come back to it with fresh eyes, although it's surprising how long it takes me to have fresh eyes. Yeah, I sometimes have to take a vacation or turn the painting over or something, but it's true.
Do you ever look at the paintings in a mirror? The old 19th
I have done that. I did that more when I was a realist painter than I do now.
What do you think is the value of that?
I'm sorry?
Why is that a good idea? I do that, and that really looks different.
Is it or isn't it a good idea?
I think it's a good idea.
What about just flipping them upside down? I do.
Yeah, that, but also looking in a mirror, really.
You know what helps me is, I'm working on it up close, it helps me to go way back and see how much life there is in it when it's, this big, because that's where it started down at a size like that, but sometimes when it's very big, I feel as if maybe I've lost some of that, and I go way back, and it helps me to think. I mean, this may sound a little crazy, but sometimes I think of the painting as a very small, like a little jewel thing that I could put in my hand, and I think, would it be beautiful if it was in my hand? And that's part of what it is to go way back. I wanted to live that way and up close. And I think if it does both, then it's accomplished a lot. You know. I thought of something I could tell.
Yes.
Should I?
Yes, of course.
The sailing painting, the one over there in the corner, that's an example of kind of a hybrid thing, and I thought it might be interesting to mention that it's a landscape, and because of that, I was allowed to make it more of an abstract painting than most of them are. And so it was a pleasure to me to say, I'm not asking much of this in the way of ideas or, you know, a story, a message, anything like that. It doesn't have to please me except as something beautifully abstract. And the idea that it allowed me to think of it as just an emotion. And the emotion in this case is something about peacefulness, calm,
It feels all
pleasure,
those
you know,
things,
enjoyment and pleasure. And that's something I don't usually think about in my paintings, because they're a little more agonized or complex, or, you know what I mean?
There's some tension usually.
And that, it made me, I enjoyed it a lot to do that. And so I could, you know, I started with this rectangular shape there, and then I think there was one in the middle somewhere, but anyway, and then I had the pleasure of turning it into a square, and, you know, all I had to do was think about it as an abstraction to be able to do that, and I didn't have to have some people messing around with it.
Any last questions before we?
Do you have any favorite painters?
Painters?
Yeah, other painters.
I have
Do you any
hundreds of favorite painters. As I said,
I mean, ones where you felt like you wanted to explore their life and you wanted to understand a lot better why they did what they did, or
there's a lot of them, but in the show, there's a painting that's inspired by Giovanni Bellini, the 15th century Italian painter, and he may be my favorite painter of all time. I mean, I love so many painters, but in the case of Giovanni Bellini, I like him so much that I even like his bad paintings. I mean, he doesn't paint bad paintings, but I even like the ones where he seems to be slipping a little bit, you know. I just forgive him anything.
which of the paintings in here do you say?
The one called Men of Sorrows. It's the one.
The two men?
The two men, yeah, in underpants, yeah.
Yeah. I actually meant to print out a copy of for people, like when people talk about it, to show them so they can see the reference, but we can pull it up on a computer.
No, it's on the wall.
No, I know, but the actual, the Bellini painting would be interesting.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Read the statement, it's a really wonderful painting. Yeah.
Well, it seems to stand out in this show.
Yeah, the genesis of it is different from anything else in the show because it was inspired by one painting, by one artist. There's nothing else here that's like that. And the first vision of it, the first version of it, was made as a birthday card for Ted, because he's the person I was traveling in Italy with when I saw the painting. And so I gave him this little birthday card with this image, and then I went from there because I couldn't stop. I mean, the painting just kept generating, not the painting, but the image just kept generating more and more symbolism, contradictions, complexities. It just, there's so much to it if you start to think about it in a different way than any other painting here, because of the way it was generated.
Once I sent you a picture of Bellini's, the one in the desert, and you said, and I had no idea, and you said, that's my favorite painting in the whole world.
The one at the Frick collection.
Yes.
You
Which I just saw
Yes.
a week ago, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
did you ever do a painting that, you know, where, with that in mind?
I'm sure I did, but I mean, Bellini's always in my mind, and that painting is, so I don't know how to pick out one. There's nothing else that I am more influenced by.
Yeah, I know.
Can you say anything about the things that attract you? I mean, what attracts you to him so much?
In Bellini,
Yeah, the composition or the color or the...
it's, the color is foremost. And because of the color, I mean, I love 15th century Venetian paintings in general because of the color. And Bellini was the best of them. And his best paintings are very complexly, complex narratives, complex ideas, like the one that we were just talking about, St. Francis in the Desert, is that what it's called?
Yes.
I think so.
Anyway, at the Frick collection, if you look it up, there's just so much happening in it and so much you can think about in it. I mean, he painted, I don't know what, 30 Madonna and Childs, and each one is slightly different, and each one gives you something to think about. And then he'll have a Madonna and Child and St. John the Baptist and somebody else, you know. I mean, he repeated these formulas, but he always made them fresh and interesting, or almost always, you know. He repeated himself too. Look him up.
Charlie, you started with saying you become enlightened about getting older. If you had become enlightened at 40, where do you think you would be at now? Like, would you have done something differently in the last 30, 40 years? Or?
What if?
Right. Yeah, did you realize any regrets, I guess?
I just think that I might have been I surely would have been a different person, but I might have been more content, you know. I might have reached the same kind of contentment that I feel now earlier.
Sure.
And had an easier view of the end, you know, which now isn't that easy, you know.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
So we should all work on being more content.
If you feel like being content.
If you feel like that's your goal. Yeah.
I'll wait for it.
Were you going to say something? No, okay.
Maybe that's a good place to.
Oh, sure. You can all ask more questions.
Yeah. So Faith just got out some wine and some soft drinks and some water if anyone needs a little beverage. And Charles, I think you can be here for a little bit if people want to have some one-on-one conversations.
I was going to ask what time it is.
This is not a watch.
Oh, no.
4:15. 4:15.
Oh,
Yeah.
we have time.
So we have a little time. So I think with that we'll wrap it up, the recording anyway. And Thank you all for coming so much. Thank you, fellows. And the show will be up through November 2nd, and it's really, really marvelous. So, thank you.
And be sure to go upstairs if you haven't yet.
Oh, yeah, great stuff.
The architecture is beautiful. And
Yes.
the artwork is
Yeah. It's also our ceramics invitational, and then upstairs in gallery number 5, Tom Lozer and Katie Hudnall have a wonderful show called Staring Contest. So, there you go.
I had an anecdote about aging today.